government is doing this mischief to the general public. They are issuing policy one by one without amending the regulation. The regulation what RBI have already did in 2008, it is to be amended. According to that regulation, this policy cannot be imposed at all.
A public interest litigation filed by advocate ML Sharma faulted the FDI policy on the ground that the government pushed it without making necessary changes in other laws and regulations that disallow FDI in those critical sectors. The top court, of course, has refused to stay the policy, but there is an assurance coming from the centre that the RBI will come out with amended regulations within 2 weeks. Hello and welcome. You're with We Mean Business. I'm Shweta Rajpal-Kohli. It's been a little over a month since big, bold FDI policy decisions were taken by the government. 1 month on, we discussed the political, economic and legal hurdles to FDI and whether floodgates will start opening up. Let me introduce our guests on the show. We have with us here Mr. ML Sharma, the advocate of the Supreme Court, who had actually filed that petition with me here in the Delhi studio. Mr. Arvind K Singhal, chairman of Technopak Advisors, also with me in the Delhi studio. Mr. D. Raja, National Secretary of the CPI, joins us on a link. Hemant Sahai, managing partner of HSA Advocates, also on a link. And Mr. Paresh Parekh, a tax partner of retail and consumer products with Ernst & Young, joins us from Mumbai. We'll move on with the FDI discussion, but first the big story of the day. The controversial land acquisition bill has been cleared by the empowered group of ministers and will now be taken up by the cabinet. Let's first bring you up to speed with some of the details of what the EGOM has cleared.
The ministers' panel has finally reached a consensus on the land acquisition bill, although recommendations are yet to be sent to the cabinet. A two-third consent of landowners will be required for a public-private partnership. There'll be no land acquisition in scheduled areas, as a Gram Sabha nod will be required in these areas. Also, a new Land Acquisition Act will be implemented prospectively. The bill is likely to be introduced in the winter session of the Parliament.
My colleague Faizan now joins me for more on the land acquisition bill. Faizan, it was an extremely controversial one. How difficult was it to really build consensus on some of those controversial salient features?
The final meeting of the group of ministers now paves the way for the land acquisition bill to be put before the cabinet. Well, most of the contentious issues have been solved by the group of ministers in their today's meet. A clear guidelines have almost been evolved as far as the land acquisition part is concerned. The GM has mandated that consent shall be formed by a minimum two-thirds of the majority in terms of the if a party is acquiring a land, at two-thirds landowners should accept this proposal, and then only will the land acquisition process go ahead. So that makes a mandatory clause of two-thirds of the landowners should agree with the land acquisition process. On the other part, when this bill will come into effect, any new land acquisition, what we learn is that the GM has decided that a cut-off date will be decided in coordination with the state governments as to when this implementation of this specific bill will come into force, and it comes into all these states at a single time. The definition of market value, that definition has been slightly twisted, and it says that in order to ensure that the acquisition of the price does not reflect in the compensation part by the land acquirer, that should not be done at the will of the acquirer. And most of the powers have now been given in terms of the compensation to the state government. As far as the acquisition of land in the scheduled tribe area is concerned, the government and the GM has now decided that it shall be the last resort to acquire land in such area, and if there is any acquisition of land, the local Gram Panchayat has to approve that process before any land acquisition in such areas, in such sensitive areas, can be carried forward. A very crucial step as far as the land acquisition, especially in the Naxal affected areas, is concerned. In terms of the compensation, if the states decides to give a higher compensation, they can have a separate mechanism for the compensation. for the land acquisition. Well, now after all this, the government hopes that the bill will be tabled in the winter session of the parliament once it is approved by the cabinet in a matter of 15 or 20 days.
All right, Faizan, many thanks for joining us and sharing those details. But let me move on now to the discussion of the day, FDI, and particularly FDI in retail. What are the economic, political, legal hurdles to introducing and ensuring that floodgates now start opening up? Let me first go across to Mr. ML Sharma, who had filed that petition in the Supreme Court. What were the key concerns that you had really raised?
In fact, this FDI notification, whatever the central government has issued, very first day when on 14 September, call came upon my petition, Supreme Court issued not only the notice but the specific direction to the Attorney General that file all this detailed policy and mandate, and I will look how much corruption has been done in the coal scheme. The news was coming in the air. Just to drop this news, just to cut the issue, public diverting the public attention towards the somewhere else. In haste, Prime Minister and their cabinet declared this FDI declaration in the evening at 6 p.m. And the notification came on 20 September. And 21st when I filed, I found that central government means the cabinet itself have no legal power to issue this type of the notification. It's belong only the power to the RBI. The parliament have already given the entire power in the hand of the RBI, and only RBI could do that one. But it was done by the central government. It have no legal value, and that's why I filed a PIL.
Okay, but we know what the Supreme Court has said. It has actually not agreed to stay the policy decision, but has said that yes, it's an irregularity that needs to be corrected. Before I come back to you, Mr. Sharma, I'd like to get Mr. Singhal to respond to something we've not heard for the first time. The government is in a hurry. There seem to be decisions being taken in haste. Would you agree?
Certainly not. At least on the subject of FDI in retail, the government certainly is not in a hurry. This matter has been under discussion for more than 10 years. So, just because there's some announcement which has happened now, certainly doesn't show that the government is in a hurry on this particular issue.
Mr. Lee Raja, would you like to respond to that?
I think the government did it in haste. Government appears to be in tearing hurry. Yes, it has been discussed, it being discussed for the past 1 decade. But whether government did certain homework properly, how come without amending the regulations of RBI, government took an executive order? It's a matter of governance. How government is in hurry? Why this tearing hurry? To please whom? To serve whose interest? These are all questions we will be raising it. There are some political questions. In fact, the government made an assurance, the former finance minister in the parliament made an assurance that you would consult all the stakeholders, including the chief ministers, to evolve a consensus before taking any step on this issue. But there was no consultation, there was no consensus, but government went ahead. And it was done in a haste, it was done in a hurry. That's how I understand. Now the matter will not rest here. The government will have to face the parliament. If the winter session runs as we expect, then the government will have to answer. And I do not think the parliament will give any approval to government's move to allow FDI in multi-brand retail trade. There it's a political legal question. Even the Supreme Court has said it lacks legal sanctity. Of course, the Supreme Court has said we will not interfere in the policy matters. I appreciate that the Supreme Court has said that, but policy matters lie with Parliament, and finally it is Parliament which can decide. Government may argue, government of the day can decide things through an executive order, but there is an assurance given by the government on the floor of the House. What happened to that assurance given by the government? So these are all issues which we need to debate. To me, I think the government was desperate. The government was trying to deflect the attention of the people from some other issues which were bothering the government too much, and that is how government took this decision in haste.
India's #1 news app, just got even better. Download NDTV's new app. Fully optimized for retina display. Full screen view. Faster response time. And Sudoku. NDTV's new iPad app. Download now.